Even right now in this current market, we've got way more candidates than jobs. That's the way the market is.
Now, for all the Dubai bling and everything which we see on media, people tend to romanticize the idea of moving into UAE, right? What are some of the things that they overestimate about being here?
With social media, obviously Dubai, for the good and for the bad, it's very much out there. It's on people's radar. The misconceptions from people trying to come here, I think, is that it's easy to get a job. It's definitely not easy to get a job.
Let's visualize this. A CV lands on your desk right now. Where is the first place where your eyes would go? His name is Conor McHugh. He's the founder of Alchemy Search, which is a specialized finance-based recruitment firm here in the UAE. He's actually recruiting for roles that he actually used to do once.
The thing is, for us, we get bombarded with CVs. You look at them for 10 seconds, 15 seconds.
Really?
Yeah.
We might have unintentionally broken a world record because it's been almost 25 minutes and nobody has spoken about AI. So
Let's go. Yeah.
What is the reality on ground?
For 25 versus 24, we actually have seen a noticeable drop in our junior level placements. That's why I think people need to upskill, like finance professionals.
What makes one LinkedIn profile stands out versus the other? Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Finance Insider podcast. If you are a finance professional in the UAE and you seem to wonder why some people land great roles easily while others seem to struggle a lot. And if your questions are, why doesn't my CV get enough attention? Where do the recruiters disappear after the first call? And what should my answer be to the expected salary question? Then this is absolutely the right episode for you. And the reason is that today I'm sitting down with somebody who is at the heart of all these conversations and decisions. His name is Conor McHugh. He's the founder of Alchemy Search, which is a specialized finance-based recruitment firm here in the UAE. Conor started his career with KPMG in the UK and then navigated his career through various FP&A and financial reporting roles before making a deliberate move into the world of recruitment here in the UAE. He started off with an agency, built his career over there, and then I think he figured out that there's a gap in the market, and that's where he started Alchemy Search, specializing in finance recruitment. Amongst many other things, what I really like about Conor is that he's actually recruiting for roles that he actually used to do once. That completely changes the conversation and the overall candidate experience. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Conor McHugh.
Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
Wonderful. Conor, thank you very much for taking out time.
Yeah, no worries.
Cool. So, Conor, did I give an accurate introduction?
Yeah, probably.
Did I miss anything?
Made me sound more interesting than I am, probably. But no, I think, a lovely introduction. And looking forward to having a good open chat today. And hopefully we can add a lot of value to your listeners.
Sure. Thanks a lot. So before we really kick off the conversation, was that actually the gap that you found in the market? What was the reason for starting Alchemy?
So I guess, the main reason was I sort of wanted to have a bit of a crack. I guess I started in recruitment quite later, as you sort of alluded to. I spent the best part of 5-6 years within finance as an accountant, and then took a bit of a gamble to move into recruitment. So I wanted to expedite my career as much as possible, and I had a very good time with Robert Walters. Without them, I wouldn't be in the UAE today. Started with them in London. They took me in when actually some other recruitment companies didn't have any interest in me, I guess, in a way. So did a couple of years with them in London, then in Dubai, and then I guess like anything in recruitment and in most sales jobs, you do your few years and then you sort of build up your network, and then you sort of you come to a road where you sort of say, will I just do it myself? And I guess I would say ignorance is bliss is probably the best way. It was just, there wasn't a big business plan. I just sort of took a punt, and thankfully it's worked out reasonably well.
As they say, fortune favors the brave.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So Conor, I've tried to structure this podcast into various themes, right? Because I expect a lot of value can be extracted from today's conversation. So the first is about basically how actually recruitment works, right? So there is a lot of misunderstanding about how long the process is. So basically, I want you to break it down in a simple way as to how does the process start from where the job is posted to when the offer is handed out. So what exactly happens behind the scene? Because a lot of people are like, oh, I got a call from the recruiter, and then they don't hear from the recruiter thinking that they have been dropped off, but actually there's a process going on behind the scenes. So what is that?
Yeah, okay. So firstly, in the UAE, there's firstly, you should not be paying the recruiter. There's a lot of scams or whatever you want to call it, but there's a lot of people coming into the market, trying to take money out of candidates. I've had sometimes candidates reach out and say, "Oh, I'm happy to pay you for your services," and no, that's a big no. So if someone's asking you to do that, then you should probably try and avoid them. But I guess the process, in short, is, if I was to approach yourself, we'd have a chat. I'd ask probably for your CV. We'd review the CV. And I guess you're trying to build a relationship. The process is, if you send your CV, you might have a briefing call or an introduction call, and you may not hear back from them again. It's not a case that you've dropped off the face of the earth. It's like there may be no opportunities. Like even right now in this current market, we've got way more candidates than jobs. That's the way the market is. So there's too many job seekers, not enough jobs. So that's the challenge for us as a recruiter. It is very much, we need to find the jobs. If we find the jobs, then I think there's, the talent is there. But I think it's, candidates, they just need to be patient, I guess is probably the best way of putting it. And sometimes the biggest, and we'll go into this during the podcast, but this is a very unique market where, you might be perfect for one job and the exact same job you won't be right for, just based on your nationality, your cultural fit, which is quite unique. It doesn't really, in London that never happened, or if I was back in Ireland, if you're back in Pakistan, that wouldn't happen. Recruiting roles, because it's obviously a lot more led by the nationalities. Well, here we've got such a melting pot of nationalities. So it's tricky, complex.
No, totally. When recruiters call you and they ask you for your profile or make an introduction, is there an actual job behind the scenes which they're trying to fill, or just trying to fill their inventory of CVs that they carry?
Yeah. In most instances, the way it is here, I think if you get reached out to, there probably is a job. But, any agency, they'll have a thing called candidate generation where, in recruitment, you can always be busy. You have to have a pipeline of candidates. And, for us as a specialist in finance, we're fortunate that we're getting so much inbound traffic of candidates. So it's not a case that we need to do as much headhunting, because candidates associate Alchemy with finance, for example. So we're getting the inbound. While if we were more of a generalist, it's IT, it's sales, it's very different. So yeah, to answer the question, I think you just need to build a relationship. I think the biggest thing I would say is try and meet the recruiter, especially if you're fresh off the boat here. If you go to the office, try and meet the person, because that's the differentiator. And the big thing with AI, which people forget, is that anybody can write a CV. It doesn't mean you can do the skills in the CV. And especially now when you've got situations where people are probably in a little bit more desperate situations, if they've just moved here or they've just lost their job, they might pump up their CV better than it is. But you still have to do the interview. So there's a lot of that as well.
100%. That naturally takes me to my second theme, which is around what are some of the reasons why people move jobs in UAE. I mean, there could be various reasons. They've spent a number of years in a job. There are certain red flags in their current role. They want to switch their careers into a different role. So you must be hearing a lot of reasons as people come across.
Two main reasons.
Okay.
Money and their boss.
Money and their boss. Really?
Yeah.
Wow. So where I wanted to get this is that, are there certain reasons which raise red flags or get accepted more easily as a recruiter from your side?
Yeah, for us, we're very hesitant when if it's a lot to do with money. It's a red flag, because of course they can go through a whole interview process, get an offer, and then go to their boss to resign, and the boss says, "How much do you want?"
Renegotiate.
And they negotiate. And we know, like we've had candidates where we've realized they just used us to get a counter offer, like to get. And look, I'm not trying to say recruiters are, God or anything, like with plenty of bad ones with bad intentions. But of course people have taken advantage of processes. They'll go through the whole process. I'm definitely going to leave, and then they get the money they want from their current boss.
Being around the block for n number of years now myself, and having given many interviews, it never crossed my mind that both these reasons, while it may be true and on some occasions, that I would be presenting a reason to switch the job as my boss is bad or my salary is low, because I thought both of them would negatively affect me. So you're saying that candidates are quite open to just say, I want to switch my job because my boss.
Yeah, well, the thing is, as I said, I'm yet to have a phone call from someone saying, I love my job, find me another job. Anyone that reaches out to us, there's a reason why they're reaching out. And the common thing is, and I guess probably more for the Gen Zs, or I'm not sure what they're called these days, the millennials or whatever it is, but remote working, being able to work from their home country in the summer, that's actually starting to be more important than salary for some of these guys. They'd rather have 2 days hybrid working a week than 5 days in an office over a couple of thousand dirhams. And obviously, as the buzzword at the moment in Dubai is the traffic, there's a lot more. It's quite different, actually. People are a bit different, I think.
Correct. Okay, so I think there's a little nuance that I would like to address, because I thought that when you post a role and people are calling you for that role or sharing their CVs for that role, so for instance, when you post a role, I would like to sell myself to that role, telling you why I want to move towards that role, what attracts me towards it, versus saying that I want to leave my current role because of A, B, and C. So do you also receive CVs from candidates, like unsolicited CVs, where there isn't a role and they're just sending it to you?
Yeah.
Okay. And you speak to them?
Every 10 minutes, probably.
Okay.
If people reach out to me on LinkedIn, they'll probably get an auto reply from me, because my LinkedIn, the inbox is just so crazy. Sure. And look, it's great to be wanted, but it's constant messages, emails. But the other point to flag as well, which is quite unique to this part of the world, is that there's very little job descriptions. A lot of companies, it's not as mature as maybe other parts of the world. We have clients where they just said, oh, just send me on one from another client you have, and let's just see if it's the same. So I think the style here is very much, let's just get the person into interview and then we'll ask them. And that's why, for people, they don't know, for us, our matchmaking for the job is, honestly, I think, it more to do with culture, fit. Are they going to get on with that person? Because the honest reality is that there is a lot of hiring here where people want a mini me of them. And obviously we're trying to get diversity, but it's hard, because then some companies have went so hard on hiring their own people, then they're like, we need to change it to, another background. Yes. And the damage is done, because the other person who comes in is like, maybe I don't feel comfortable in that sort of environment. So, and it's not to say anything's good or bad. It's just some companies make the mistake, I think, of going too hard.
Correct. Okay, so let's move on to where people want to move into UAE from outside UAE into finance roles, right? So now, for all the Dubai bling and everything which we see on media, people tend to romanticize the idea of moving into UAE, right? And based on those inbound leads, those people, what are some of the motivations that you generally hear from people who want to move into UAE? And what are some of the things that they overestimate about being here, and some of the things that they underestimate?
So I think the amount of people that come for a holiday and then they go back to their home country, maybe the country that I'm from, for example, in Ireland, and it's lashing rain, and they're like, I want to go back there. So I think a lot of people come on holidays, and they enjoy the aspect, and because, if we're being honest, is that there's the current state of the world is not a very positive one. With wars, everything, it's pretty tough out there, and a lot of countries are suffering. So I think it's with social media, obviously Dubai, for the good and for the bad, it's very much out there. It's on people's radar. I think the misconceptions is changing massively with, maybe 10, 15 years ago, where it's like, if, you couldn't drink alcohol, or, there was all those sort of views. Well, now it's obviously a lot more welcoming to a lot of people. So I think the misconceptions from people trying to come here, I think, is that it's easy to get a job. It's definitely not easy to get a job. And that's a challenge we have at some, a lot of candidates. There's a big thing of entitlement where they're like, of course they'll hire me, look at my CV. And it's like, well, the difference now compared to, 15, 20 years ago is that the talent's already here. If I have a Pakistani CFO and they say, you need to find me someone from this university in Lahore or some, they're already here. Like, they don't need to parachute these people in anymore. So that's a big thing. And because, for example, I'm not sure what the normal sort of notice period is in Pakistan for jobs, but for example, in London where I was before, 3 months across the board, especially even for newly qualified roles.
Really?
Yeah, 3 months. So that's a big challenge, where in UAE it's 1 month. Yeah. Usually for junior to mid-level roles, it's 1 month. Then you get senior, it's a bit more 3 months. But so companies can't wait. They're not going to wait 3 months to get a senior accountant and then relocate them, etc. Because the talent's already here. So yeah, hopefully that.
But anyway, speaking of entitlement, it's so true because there was somebody who reached out to a recruiter and he was from let's say a developed country. And this guy was like, hey, why wouldn't I land a job? I will definitely land a job.
Yeah.
Look at my CV, look at my university graduation. And the guy told him that, look, what do you think? People are riding camels over here or what? There are so many talented people over here. And it's very difficult. I mean, you can't just simply get in because you are from country A or B or C,
exactly.
right?
Yeah.
So I think that's what is changing, at least in my view.
Yeah, no, it's massively changing, and there's such an oversupply. Like the talent's already here, and there's people undercutting salaries. Like salaries haven't gone up. You know, they're going down, if anything. You know, as I think I said on one of our podcasts last year, is that we're recruiting some roles for certain companies, which we recruited the exact same role 3 or 4 years ago, and now the person that we placed has now maybe been promoted or maybe they've moved on. So it's the exact same hire. 4 years on, the salary is the exact same.
Wow.
And in those 4 years, a lot of other things have changed here. So I think people come over here with this thing, oh, tax free, but like, you know, the cost of living is very high.
I've been in finance for some time now, and of course there's a network that I have built over the years, and people also reach out to me, you know, looking for jobs in UAE. So common question that I come across, Conor, is that people say that, hey, can I apply for a UAE job while I'm not in the UAE from abroad? For example, I'm in Pakistan, I'm in Saudi or elsewhere. So based on your experience, does it really matter that the person is here in person versus applying from another country for a job in UAE?
Massively. Yeah, like, and I know it's probably very hard for people from India and Pakistan in particular, because I know it's actually so close. It's only a couple of hours flight. They're like, oh, I can get there very quick, and I respect that. And obviously, other people in Western Europe, of course, it's a big difference. You know, you can just fly in, fly out. Like 7-8 hours is very different than 2. So we want people, because it's still so old school here. People want to interview in person. You know, in more developed markets, you know, Zoom interviews is a lot more obviously common, while here they still want to meet you in person. And you know, even though if you're immediately available in your home country, you still need to move here. You still need to get an apartment. You know, it's a lot. There's more hurdles, and it's not impossible. I'm not going to be completely negative, but I do think that in the first instance, the client will say to us, who is here, who is on the ground, or who has booked a one-way flight. Like, we have people who are coming here. You know, for example, if you were saying, okay, I'm leaving Pakistan in 2 weeks and I'm coming full time then in Dubai, then of course we can get you in processes because you're committed to coming. You know, we can try and get you in processes. But if you're in your home country saying, I'm on 3 months' notice, find me a job, you're going to stay where you are.
Really?
Yeah.
It's difficult.
Yeah.
Okay. So can they do something to improve their chances, irrespective from which country they are? I mean, I know a lot of this discussion is going towards sort of Pakistan but generally. So while somebody's away, it's very difficult for people to pack their bags and leave without having a job in UAE, right?
Yep.
So is there something that they can do to improve their chances?
Building the relationships with the recruiters, of course, is going to help. Like if we have a standout candidate, of course, it's in our interest to get them a job, because that's how we make money. So if we have someone who's top tier, but it's more on the client, because some clients will say, I need this person yesterday.
Yes.
And it's not very rare. Like sometimes the odd time, I would say in 10 job briefings, maybe only 2 say, we will wait for the right person. And that's where, yes, then of course someone who's outside the region might come into play. But I think it's very hard for people who are single or not married with kids, or maybe they're married but no kids, then the move is a lot easier. Well, I think, you know, if you have kids and everything, it's a different ball game, because you can't just leave your job where you are from and income and just come out here. So it makes these sort of younger people, you know, very attractive, because they don't need the Middle East experience either. Obviously, the more senior you go, the Middle East experience is crucial. It's very, very hard. And people will say, well, what is this? It means just dealing with chaos. That's the honest reality. Being able to deal with, you know, just different challenges which you mightn't get in other parts of the world. Because again, the way business is done here is very unique, because everyone has a different view. And it's not to say their view is better than this one. It's just things are done differently. And you need a bit of time to actually understand he's not being rude or she's not being rude. That's just how their sort of business is done. Like for me, for example, like getting paid here is just, it's a lot trickier. You will get paid, but it's like, you will get paid, but it's not going to be on time. And you need to just bite your bottom lip sometimes. And this is a nuance I've had to get used to. And when I came out here from London, you know, you'd be chasing for feedback, and things are just a bit more relaxed how they go about things. And then if you send not a passive aggressive email, but you get a phone call straight away saying, how dare you do this? So you just need to get used to the region. It took me a few years. Don't get me wrong. I had to learn to bite my bottom lip a bit more.
Cool. Okay. Interesting. So we established that having an in-person presence goes a long way, right? Okay, cool. Now let's carry this onwards into seasonality angle of the hiring, right? Is there a particular season of hiring? Okay, fine. I'm a guy in India or in Pakistan. I'm ready to come in. But what time of the year should I come in?
When the kids are in school. Whenever the kids are in school, that means that the decision makers are also working. So if you think about it, whenever the kids are in school, mum and dad, you know, whoever it is, they'll be the hiring managers. If the kids aren't in school, they're most likely on holidays. They're in their home country. So that for me is like, and we see it ourselves. That's what, you know, our revenue is unfortunately, it's very up and down. Yeah. Like that's because it's quite seasonal. So, you know, for example, we have Ramadan coming up. I know things will slow down a bit because, of course, you know, hours are shorter. People have different, you know, priorities. So, yeah, I would say the best way of looking at it is Q4, Q1 are pretty good. They're probably the two best quarters for recruitment, Q4 and Q1. And Q2 is good, but then Q3 is obviously a bit slower because you have the summer.
Yeah, so summer holidays for school.
Summer holidays. And then you also got to remember, you're going to have now a lot of bonuses being paid in March and April. Like there's people who are in jobs who are waiting to get their bonus, then they resign. You know, there's someone going to work tomorrow knowing they're resigning, but they're waiting to get paid that bonus. That's when a lot of transition happens. So yeah, when the kids are in school.
Nice. I think that's a very easy and very, very objective answer, I would say. Cool. Makes sense. So, okay, now let's move on to the market right now as you see it, right? Yep. So are there certain roles that you see are oversupplied, in demand? What is the state of the market as you see it?
The state of the market in, we're February now, isn't it? We're recording this in February. So it's really, really busy if you're mid-level. I think if you are a mid-level professional, and mid-level, I'm defining that as finance manager, maybe controller, senior accountant, FP&A manager. That space is pretty good. The senior end of the market, you know, I'm not going to say we've a massive share in there. We get the odd senior role in. It's pretty good. But the problem with the senior end is that the companies can be so picky. Industry, nationality, you know, all these things which they can get because the supply is there. While mid-level is, you know, you don't need as much UE experience for mid-level roles. So that's where a lot of the people arriving here from outside the region can get work pretty easily. So if you're immediately available, you're very attractive. Because the challenge is now is that in an interview process, the majority of candidates are probably out of work or have just moved here. So that means that companies are effectively taking advantage of the situation, and instead of offering the market rate, well, let's just say it's 30,000 a month for a finance manager job, they'll offer 25. And the person will take it because they've got nothing else on. And obviously what's happening now is that's happening way too much. And then sometimes when you send other CVs, the client, they're like, that CV is not strong enough for that budget, but that is the rate. So it's dog eat dog is the best way of putting it. But it's very hard. But then if we look at senior roles, you know, if you're a finance director, if you're going for a finance director role, say if you're making that natural, you know, climbing the hill where you might be an FC and your next role is an FD, then a CFO. So you're an FC going for an FD role. Maybe you're on 45k a month. The FD position is paying 55, 60. Okay, you go forward for the role. In the exact same role, you'll have a CFO who's maybe on 80, 90k, who's lost their job and is saying, yeah, I'll take that role, 60k. So, you know, there's probably 20 years of difference in experience between these two professionals, and the hiring company's like, I can get these guys for the same price. Obviously, they're going to go with the senior person. And that's unique. That's not happening in other parts of the world.
just continuing with the chat. I mean, is it a challenge when you hire an overqualified person for a role because they might
It's crazy.
not be as motivated,
There you
right?
go. They leave.
They leave,
yeah.
exactly.
Like, look, don't get me wrong. I'm not gonna. We get our invoice paid. Life is great, but like, of course, when I get called 6 months later, that person's left. I'm like, well, are you surprised?
Yeah.
Because you got to remember, the companies are taking advantage of the people. Like, they know their rate is higher.
Yeah.
And of course, the candidates will remember this. We're dealing with accountants here. They know their numbers. So they know that no matter what, they know at the back of their head, I'm worth more than this.
Yeah.
And the minute they get touched on the shoulder saying, here's a job, CFO role paying 90, they're gone. So it's well, if you'd went for example, the FC who's on 45 for 60, of course he's going to stay. Because he's learning, he's growing, and he might develop into a CFO down the line. So it's a very short-term approach, I think, here. I think that's just I'm not going to say a cultural thing, but it's just something in this region where it's a lot of just quick fixes.
Yeah. You mentioned nationality a couple of times over here. Based on my experience, it hasn't come my way. I pretty much travel on a Pakistani passport. That's what I've been. I don't know if it'll come at some point in time in front of me, but does that play a really big role? Or at certain levels? And if yes, why? Is it about getting access to various countries, due to visas, or what is exactly the reason?
Look, I think it's the biggest elephant in the room in UAE,
and
people don't like talking about it. Obviously, I'm happy to talk about it.
That's
if you're happy for me to talk about it,
I would love to.
And to start it, there's no right or wrong. Okay. For certain nationality, it'll work for you. Like, it'll work for you or against you. And it's obviously for us, we go to a job briefing and the HR will say it cannot be this nationality or it can be this. And there's various reasons. I think the travel thing can be an issue, of course. If it is a role where there's a lot of travel involved, of course, certain passports may have issues. That does happen. I wouldn't say it's the number one reason sometimes. The honest reality is, if we're being honest, that there's so many countries around here. Some countries have had issues historically with each other as well. That can create tension sometimes in an office. And we're dealing with accountants, so I know we're not dealing with maybe aggressive salespeople or something like that. So it is a little bit different. But it does definitely come into play. And there's certain companies that maybe they want to change the culture of the office a bit, so they want to bring some diversity.
I think that's a good reason.
Yeah,
that's a fair reason.
Yeah,
100%.
No, diversity.
More diversity.
Diverse. Like, for example, I've had an Indian client where the guy said, I can't hire any more Indians. And this is an Indian.
Yes,
so these things are, because one big problem I think in UAE is that so many people just get jobs through referrals, and someone does someone a favor, and it just builds up. And it's not, of course, I'm going to say this as the recruitment person, but if you should have an independent profile, well, it's just someone, can you help this? This is my cousin's son or something like that. They get an interview and maybe they hire them. And that happens quite a lot. And of course, I'm going to push recruitment, but if you get an independent, like we have clients, and it was, they hired someone through a reference, someone they knew from a previous life, and it hasn't worked out. And the client has said to me, I shouldn't have done this. There was a bias in my head to go for this person, and I shouldn't. And now it's caused a small issue, but the
humans at the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, sometimes they'll work out great, but yeah, I think it's a big thing in UAE. So and even for us, like, if you look at Alchemy, we're quite diverse on purpose.
Okay.
We've got a few Irish guys, we've a few Indian ladies, we have an Arabic lady, then a few Filipinos. But like, if I go to certain meetings, I'll bring that nationality. If I go to meet an Indian CFO, I'd bring Anshul from my team. And just it helps build a relationship.
It does.
No matter what anyone says, I think that's just the
commonalities. You said something interesting. You said certain nationalities would not go along well with each other. So I think that's an interesting one, because I thought, and I have lived in Dubai enough number of years to say this with credibility, that I thought Dubai has its own Dubai culture. People blend in very well, irrespective of which part of the world they are from. So, for example, let me break some stereotypes. People feel that Pakistanis and Indians are always locked horns with each other. It's absolutely wrong. It's a wrong stereotype. I mean, we go so well with each other, especially when we're working in environments like, for instance, in UAE, where it's a common culture, right? So I say this to people very often, that if you lock all nationalities in one room, the first person that I would connect to would be an Indian person, and I'm quite sure the first person they would connect to would be a Pakistani person. Eat the same, speak the same.
Well, you are historically all the same people,
right? So in my company right now, most of our engineers, great engineers, are from India, and we have so much fun together. It doesn't ever feel like we are from different countries, right? So I thought that Dubai has its own culture, which blends in people from different parts of the world into this sort of cohesive, kind of coherent culture. But again, there could be nuances and realities.
Yeah, look, and again, I have many Pakistani and Indian friends, so it's they're
and there's a match coming up in a few days.
Yeah. So no, I just think look, I'm only saying this because we're stuck in the middle. I go on these briefing meetings. It's feedback we get. Like for example, we've one client now where they're trying very aggressively to change the culture in the business from more not local culture, but this sort of region, Gulf region, to change it more into international culture.
Yeah.
So that they're like openly not hiring anyone from Gulf countries, and that's what they're trying to do, and it's just trying to change the not the mindset, but just the culture. They're just trying to change things.
No, totally.
So yeah,
no, it's a very interesting topic, and we can have an entire podcast.
Yeah,
about
we
this,
could.
I think,
we could.
No, thanks for sharing your views, though. Okay, now we talked about CVs, right? From your lens as a recruiter, what are some of the things that make a CV fail instantly versus a CV that goes a long way?
And it's good now. We've just obviously come back from. This is why a nationality thing is actually so important. And people sometimes not give me a tough time, but I will openly say I have a much better chance of placing an Irish candidate than an Indian candidate. And that's because I can relate to their background. If I said to you, what's the best university in Pakistan, I wouldn't have a clue. And that's not me being disrespectful, but if I said to you, what's the best university in Ireland, you probably wouldn't know either. So my point is, if I see a CV with really good academics from Ireland and a really good university, of course I'm like, wow, this person's really good, he or her. While if you had an Indian recruiter who's seen an Indian CV that had the best academic, because all our school systems are different. Universities, these things mean a lot. That's how I read a CV, and that's what we're quite fortunate. We do place quite a few Irish candidates, and if someone says to me you're right, you're just biased to them, I'd say there is an element because I just know their CV better. And that's why, for example, we have Angela on our team. She's from India. I'm sure she can understand their CVs a lot stronger as well. So that's one big thing I would say. And even actually, if I'm thinking about it, if I was a job seeker, try and find a recruiter who's actually from where you're from or something. That's something I've just thought about now, but it's going to help you 100%.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, for us, we get bombarded with CVs. You look at them for 10 seconds, 15 seconds.
Really?
Yeah, and just the same as I think
course.
hiring managers say, and that's why we always say, keep your CV to 1-2 pages. Doesn't need to be 3. Like I've CFO CVs as 1 page. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's just bang, there you go. Like nobody cares what you did 20 years ago. If you worked in PwC, just have it as 2 lines. Worked for here, you're still a young man, but like in years to come, but like that starting experience, just have it there. Just like if you were to put your university on your CV, it's 1 line. I went here, I got this degree.
God, this is so important, by the way, so valuable. So let's visualize this. A CV lands on your desk right now. Where is the first place where your eyes would go?
Academics. Yeah.
Okay.
Like for example, if you got first time passes in your ACA, say it. First time passes is a differentiator. Like when we sell in a candidate, this candidate is top tier academics, first time passes, great university, got a first. Like these things do matter. Like it's the only opportunity where you can boast about yourself and not feel like you're being arrogant.
Wow, this is so good, because I thought people would care more about my most recent experience versus what I did.
But
I would love that because academics are something that you can prove objectively, right? If you did a top, you got a distinction or something that makes you stand out, versus if you and I both worked in a company a number of years ago, there's not much for me to prove that I stood out.
But there's simple things like when you dress, like you're a very polished man, like you dress, like these things do actually matter though. Like there's certain companies, like for example, in law firms, or like they're very polished. If you meet someone who's like works in a law firm, like they have a nice suit, their hair looks, well, if you someone in oil and gas, they're a bit more rough and ready, and that's what great
Ready for the rig.
Yeah, but I'm saying
Yes.
the fit is a bit different.
Yes.
So when you meet someone, and that's why trying to get in front of recruiters, like we can meet someone and they'd be like, you know, super polished. I'm like, send them professional services, they're going to be perfect because they're going to look the part and get on well. Then you'll have someone who's a bit more, you know, they may have, I'm not trying to say law firms are boring people, but they're, you know, someone with a bit more of a personality is going to be more a really good business partner in a manufacturing company or something like that. It's a different type of person, which you cannot. I know we're talking about CVs, but that's why there is more to a CV. And yes, your recent experience, of course, it's important. I think even at the top, you know, having what have you achieved? What have you actually achieved? What can you prove you've achieved? Like for us now, for example, and I know recruitment's different than finance, but if you know we're hiring at the moment, what would I look for right now? I'd be like, what was your billings? You know, what did you bill? What have you actually delivered on? Can you manage people? They're the big things. Can you get references? Are they good references? You know, people you can trust. And even actually when you're interviewing, if you can find out someone common, like if I was interviewing for a job with you, if I knew someone that knew you, that knew me, I'd be in their ear saying, have a word, you know, and I'd be saying, have a word with them if you want to get a reference on me, because it's about influence. Like if we were about to hire someone and we had a common connection and I did a reference and they're like, that person's really good, I'd hire the person. So I think leveraging on your network, getting out to events is really important.
Super valuable. Conor, tell me something. People tend to write things like, I did a cost structuring exercise and I was able to save N millions for my company. How do you probe question?
Big thing is don't say I to everything. Say we. Because sometimes we get feedback where you get these entitled candidates, I, and then the person's like, this person just loves themselves. And you're not going to be a team fit, you know, and I've had times with feedback and like our biggest thing is this will be a good one for your listeners. If we have a candidate call us up after an interview and said, I absolutely smashed it was brilliant, I'm getting an offer, that sort of vibe, I guarantee 9 times out of 10 they're not getting an offer, because what's happened is, one, they love talking too much, and the interviewer has obviously made the decision during the interview, this isn't the person. So instead of grilling them, let's just have a chat.
Wow. Because there's a syndrome about this. They call it the MCS, the main character syndrome, where people think everything was because of me. And this is true. By the way, but this is such a delicate line, right? Because you have to sell yourself, right? But you don't have to sell yourself enough to look like an MCS at the same time.
And the thing is, an interview is an hour conversation. You don't actually do any work. Like, you know, I could sit, it's like you and me having a chat now. Like, I'm not actually proving, like I was an accountant. I was probably the worst accountant KPMG ever hired globally. Trust me. I could interview quite well, but I could do nothing on Excel. For people who worked in audit, I was on Cash at Bank for 4 years. Like, they gave me the simplest tasks. Like, I was like nearly manager there. I was still doing Cash at Bank for clients. That tells you how bad I was. But I was pretty good at talking, I guess. But I built relationships within the business. But the point is, it's a chat. And for people, I know there's going to be a lot of job seekers hopefully listening to this, is that if you get asked for any interview, just go. Even if you've no interest, just go. Because what people forget is that, and I've actually seen it happen here a few times, where we had a really good candidate and we kept sort of saying, would you go to this? Like, no, not interested. And I appreciate if you're in a job, you don't have time, that's fine. However, if you're here immediately available or have lost your job, the more you interview, the more confidence you get. The more confidence you get in a good way, the better you come across. The better you come across, you're going to leave a mark. And we had this candidate in particular said no to 4 interviews. Then eventually, yes, that's what I want. They went to the interview, they bombed it. Because they hadn't interviewed properly in 3 or 4 years, especially people coming from training contracts. You know, when you were PwC, when you get the job initially, when you're a young man, you know, it's just like, are you smart? Are you presentable? Okay, there, you do the job. The interview wasn't that hard in the grand scheme of things. Well, when you go for your first job in industry, you've probably been interviewed for 4 years, and it's a very different interview that you're going for. So yeah, just, and be a bit selfish. And this will, unfortunately be to the detriment of the recruiter. But just go, even if you're not interested in the job, because you never know. And because out here, there's so many companies that you've never heard of. If you're new to the region, Alpha Tame, for example, or one of these big family groups, they run everything. But if I was fresh off the plane from Ireland, I don't know who these guys are. It's one of the biggest companies out here, like these family groups. But yeah, just interview. The more you practice, because historically, obviously, accountants are quite introverted people. So it's trying to get that confidence out, because you can't see how good they are at Excel by how they speak.
Yep. Speaking of interviews, let's go deep into this, because that was my next theme anyway. Yeah. So, as you rightly said, accountants basically boast the technical knowledge. Generally, they tend to, right? They try to quote IFRs, the IFRs dropping, not the name dropping. How important do you think is the storytelling and the commercial awareness versus just selling out your technical expertise in an interview?
And I think this is where the biggest gap in UAE now is, the having commercial acumen. Because I think the honest reality is, the technical side, and every nationality can do this. Like every you'll have experts, the number will be the same. Like you give it to this person, they will use IFRS, they will get you the same end result. While an AI obviously is, we might talk about that as well, but that's where it can be disrupted. While storytelling, commercial acumen, that's where I think finance is going. And I think accountants are going to need to become more confident, be better at storytelling, building relationships. Because if you can use an AI tool to get you this answer that previously took you 2 days to get, now you can get it in 20 minutes. What's the rest of your time being spent doing? And that's where a massive gap I see is people need to become leaders and managers. Because that's where the future is going. Because if there's going to be less people, but if you have more time, you need to be a leader of retaining people. Trust me, we get calls every day from people who work unhappy in jobs, of course. And it's leadership, being able to retain people. And because we're, this younger generation are very much, I'm not going to say introverted because you have all these influencers and stuff, but they don't want to be, the human interaction is very different now. So I think if I was a younger man, playing sports in team environments, that's for me is such a skill that's going to do you great in the rest of life.
It's amazing. One more thing on the interview. So just as I asked you about the CVs, right? Where do your eyes land on the CV? When you start an interview, what's the first thing that hits you as the candidate starts speaking? Let's suppose it's an in-person interview.
Eye contact.
Huh?
Eye contact. Yeah.
All right.
You have very good eye contact. No, the eye contact. Are you slouched? Or how are you giving yourself to the conversation? Using hands. Just obviously the environment you can tense up quite a lot, and that's why I'm trying to say is that the more you do, the more confident you're going to be. Like we're doing this podcast today. You've done many. I've done quite a few. It's been very natural, I think. But if this is the first time I've ever done it, I might be a bit more stiff or trying to get it across. So, I think it's just getting the practice as much as you can. But what I'd be looking at is, I guess, how are they telling their story? Is it realistic? Is it honest? They're the big, because I think people can work out if someone's telling you porky pies. I guess you can get a bit of a sense. Yeah, people are smart.
Yeah, they have this very special filter to filter out BS from authenticity very quickly.
Yeah.
But you're right. I think as they say, perception is reception. So the way they perceive you is the way they receive you. So if I'm perceived to be tensed, you would receive me as being tensed, and then you would make your conclusions around that.
Yeah, because it's a lot to just how people are sat. If they're relaxing. You also got to remember is that you need to make an impact. You're a senior finance professional. I'm sure you've interviewed so many people. The interviewee doesn't realize that the interviewer might have already spoken to 4 people. They're wrecked. They're tired. They're not giving you the same attention. So you need to really make an impact. Try and get some common ground. You mentioned obviously before we came in here, you follow cricket. Big. If I was, I'm not going to say I am big into cricket, but if I was really big into cricket, you try and get some small talk going with interview is a 2-way process, and the problem in UAE is that interviewees think that it's 2 ways. They need to impress you as well. Why are you with the company? how's it been for you? I seen you're only here 2 years. I see you're only here 3 months. What's the 3 months been like? Has it been sold to you the way you're selling it to me? Is it the same? So yeah, and I know that can be tricky for maybe more junior or younger candidates, but imposter syndrome. I'm obviously getting a bit older now myself. Everyone's just winging it, is the honest reality. I'm winging it. Don't be scared by grey hairs or baldness or whatever. Just because they're a bit old, you do not be intimidated by that. Yeah, if you're good, you're good. That's it, simply.
So true.
Yeah.
Lovely. You've really dropped some great gems over here, especially around it's a two-way process, because I didn't look at it this way before, and I'm sure many people who are listening wouldn't have looked at it this way as well. Yeah. It's a two-way process.
Because the big thing is you're looking for someone who you're going to learn from.
Yeah.
Like if you're an FC or an FM, you're not at CFO level yet. Some people might think they are, but you need who's going to get you there.
Yeah.
And that's why, especially coming here, look at the most important person you should be looking at is not the company. It's actually the boss you're going to have. For example, if you put the dilemma to someone, let's just say, you've a job opportunity with, I don't know, Coca-Cola or something, great, big company, but the boss you interview is a terrible person and you just get a very bad vibe off them. Then you have another opportunity with an unknown business, but the boss is incredible. Go to the unknown business. Learn from that person, because that's what's going to get you, accelerate your career.
Lovely. Let's move this along to the next theme, which is around LinkedIn. Now, LinkedIn is unavoidable, right? So more than just having the CV, you have another avenue to check your candidate, which is their LinkedIn profile. So my question is that what makes one LinkedIn profile stands out versus the other? I mean, what makes a LinkedIn profile being effective rather than just being complete?
Perfect. And because I wanted to bring one other good point, I think, as well for the CV piece.
Sure.
When you're reaching out to someone on LinkedIn or even a CFO or FD, or whatever, word your email or message correctly. Don't just say hi. If I honestly, if I receive an email of a CV and the person doesn't even have my name, it just gets deleted straight away. If I can see you've just copy and pasted, like some essays I get, I'm not reading through this. Just keep it short and sweet. Have your CV. Hi, Conor. Don't have an AI generated message asking me all these questions, and some of the messages I get. But yeah, just that's probably a pretty good tip, I think, for anyone trying to come into the region or someone who's here. Just say their name, keep it short and sweet. Don't demand to have a call. I get a message, can you speak? I was like, yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, and I know we're in a world now where everyone thinks they're too busy anyway. Maybe I'm a bit like that as well. But
okay, cool. So my question was, what makes one LinkedIn profile stand out versus the other?
So LinkedIn profile, I actually, and again, this is not me being vain or anything, but the profile picture is important. How if you look smart or polished. Again, it's something that people won't admit, because it's wrong to say something like that, but that's the honest reality. If you have someone who looks pretty sharp, think about it. Who are we going to put in front of our client? If someone looks the part, well, they look pretty. I'm not saying for women it's short dress. They just look well, like a guy, a nice suit or something like that. It's
your first impression.
As I say, you can't make a first impression twice.
Exactly.
So it is, it's important. And then, you look at their experience, is the LinkedIn, it doesn't need to be too long. Again, it's just boom, 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 boom. I don't want to be scrolling the whole way down. Have on your About Me section, have some of the achievements again. So you're in theory, you're just copy and pasting your CV to an extent. But I'd be looking at that. Have they moved jobs quite a lot? People get a bit scared here that they job hop quite a lot, and sometimes it's for reasons out of their control. The reality is here, people who've worked here long enough know that unfortunately things happen. Like there's very little governance in a lot of companies here, so they can just come in and clean shop with very little repercussions. I wouldn't get too caught up in those things.
One more question on LinkedIn. So do recruiters care about the frequency of posting, or somebody who's never posted, or something around that?
I think, look,
positively or negatively, both.
Yeah, no, look, and of course we're We're very active on LinkedIn. I think we probably frustrate some people out there, but yeah, we're pretty active. So for us, it's everything. Branding's everything, and obviously the buzzword at the moment is personal brand. Of course, if someone's posting, I think that's how we connected. You're very good. You're very active on LinkedIn yourself, and that's probably why I reached out to you. I think initially, or vice versa, we connected through seeing each other. So I think if it does help you, even for my podcast, if I see a finance leader posting a lot, or maybe they've been on talks, I'm like, well, they might be interested in coming on our podcast. So it does help, but it just depends. Some people are like, I don't care about that stuff, but I think in a market where it is quite volatile, I think you need to have relationships. You need to have some sort of awareness, because then if something happens next week which is out of your control, then you're out of a job. Where are your relationships? Where are your networks? So yeah, if that.
It does very well. One more thing around LinkedIn. So there is this filter that people put around open to work. Does that play against the candidates who put it?
I think it depends how. I think everyone will have a different opinion on it. Like, of course, if I have my LinkedIn, and this is going to sound bad, but like, if my LinkedIn connections, if there's just hundreds of open to work people, I just know they're obviously just
Out
of a job, or like, no, pestering is the wrong word, but there's only so much time in the day. Like, it's impossible for me to speak to every candidate, meet every candidate, because nothing will get done. I wouldn't be able to generate the roles to help these people. So again, it's very easy for me to say it's wrong or it's not, but sometimes these people are in terrible positions where they have to do it. They're trying to do it. So I don't think it's a negative thing, I guess, probably the best way of putting it.
Absolutely. Now it's time that we address the elephant in the room, which is the salary.
Oh, yeah.
So Conor, I would like to start by first establishing a baseline. I know you don't have an exact number. Nobody has an exact number per role category, junior accountants to senior accountants to finance managers to FCA. But let's just establish some range, some bands, all right? Just to give.
I can give you them all.
All right, cool.
I can give you them all. So
spell it out.
So what I would say in the current market, someone who is newly qualified, so maybe like a senior accountant or financial accountant analyst, could be like anything from 15 to 20,000 dirhams a month. The next step up from that would naturally be maybe a finance manager. That can be anything from 23, 24 to 30 maybe. Then a group finance manager might be 30, 35. FCs can be anything from maybe 30 to 40. Then a group FC could be up to 45k. And sorry, this is in dirhams per month for any overseas listeners.
Bitcoin.
Yeah. So group FC maybe up to 45. Then head of finance 45 to 50. Sorry, 40 to 50. Then you're sort of pushing into the more senior positions. Director. So finance director can be anything from 50 to 70, 80k maybe. And then CFOs, I will put a caveat with everything now in a second, but anything from probably 70 to 120, 140 for the most part. Of course, I speak to guys who are on 150, 200. But the caveat with this for your listeners is that is, in my view, the rough ranges. Of course, everything's indicative of the size of the company, the industry. Usually the non-sexier looking companies pay the best. Oil and gas, all these things. They've got loads of money. They can. It's sometimes industries you don't think about actually pay really well. While, for example, like luxury retail probably doesn't pay as well, because a lot of, this isn't being sexist, a lot of females want to be associated with these brands. They obviously get very good perks with that, which aren't maybe financial. But the big thing I would say is that different industries are paying better. Then you'll have startups which may not pay you better per month, but maybe you get LTIPs or you get some sort of sweat equity within it. So there's different ways. Then in Abu Dhabi, you're going to have a lot better benefits. The big thing in Dubai now is that the benefits are definitely not half as strong as they used to be. Dubai is no longer an outpost location, where it was previously. Saudi probably still is, so they pay these big expat benefits like schooling. That doesn't happen as much in Dubai anymore. In Abu Dhabi, it still is at play because you have the big, massive conglomerates that will pay top dollar for the people. But in UAE, because in Dubai more so, because it's such so competitive. It's a race to the bottom at the moment.
Wow.
So yeah,
we'll a candidate, but
that's a killer for us because we, I said we bill on salary.
Yeah.
So our costs have been going up year on year, but unfortunately the salaries haven't. So our fees are stagnating or going down, if anything.
Very insightful.
Yeah. So no, I think I'm happy to share as much insight on it. But the big point for job seekers is that, I think I was telling this to a CFO the other day, is that if you're in a job process right now, you're probably competing against two. If there's 4 or 5 candidates, minimum 2 of them will be out of a job or have just relocated here. So the hiring company will have maybe 60%, 70% of the shortlist will be out of work, immediately available, no notice period, no counter offer. They're very attractive. While the other candidate is maybe in a job, they're very good, but they're not 100% sure. They're happy enough where they are. They're going to be harder to land, and you'll also have to give them a good offer. So yeah, it's ultimately it's stagnating salaries.
First of all, thank you very much for sharing this. Moving to a related question, what are some of the mistakes that people make while negotiating salaries when changing jobs? So there are certain rule of thumbs that people come up with. My current salary into 20% up to 25%. So what is the mistake? What should they do?
Well, firstly, there's so many candidates out there. They're like, especially people working in the Big Four, for example. They're like, I'm going to be manager in 10 months. It's like, you're not. You can't just say. So they might be on 25. They're like, I'm going to be promoted in 6 months. Then my salary will be 30. So I'm actually now looking for 35k. I was like, it doesn't work like that. So I think you just need to be realistic and just don't be too greedy. Like there's so many greedy people in this market, and we see it straight away. If it's all about money, honestly, we just forget them. And of course, there's different reasons. But if the candidate is very money driven, we just know, and that we're in the middle, and we know the client is not going to overpay because they don't need to, because they can get other talent for below the market rate that are immediately available. So don't be too greedy is a big thing, because recruiters can pick up on it pretty quickly. And like we'll have times where you get a candidate the whole way through a process, and the whole way through they're like, I want this, I'll take this, and then when they get to offer, now I want this. It's
good advice.
Yeah, it's painful. It's painful.
Agree. Now moving on to something which is related is titles. How important are titles? Should people negotiate them heavily, or should they pick up their battles more wisely? Yeah,
it's quite interesting, because some people are very title driven, which sometimes is right, but there's a big difference. A CFO who's earning 40,000 dirhams a month versus a CFO who's earning 100,000 dirhams a month, and that's not to take away from the junior person, for the guy on 40k, but be realistic on where you're at in your career. And I get it. Some people they want to see progress, and that can be seen in titles. And it's very easy for me to say it. I'm part of a small business, but don't get too, like, if the role's good, if the team's good, and also people need to remember is that, especially with SME, bigger companies and medium, they're not going to change their whole company policy for you. You knew what the job title was when you got approached for the job. Now you have an offer. You can't just say, can it be called a financial controller, even though it's a finance manager? If it was a finance manager the whole way through, it's a finance manager.
Correct.
So yeah, that's quite common.
So tell me one thing, as a recruiter, let's suppose you are filling a role for financial controller, would you go about seeing profiles for senior accountants, titled as senior accountants, though they're very good, or would you only ring fence around financial controller CVs? Because that's why people become so picky about their titles, right?
Yeah, no, I think in a normal market, you would naturally get the guy who's making that transition up. In the market we're working in is that companies will say, just find me another financial controller who's lost their job, or someone who's a plug and play. Because the big point, I think, for your listeners, especially people who are outside the region, is that the finance functions here in general are very, very lean. So if somebody leaves or someone resigns, it's very hard to absorb that across the teams. Well, if you're in a company where there's a proper controllership function, there's a proper FP&A function, if someone leaves, it's fine. We can just give this person this responsibility. So companies here, instead of having, hiring a senior accountant, maybe they'll say just get someone who's maybe worked already as a controller, who is more of a plug and play. So again, it comes back, I think one of my initial points is it's a very short-term view here in a lot of things. So, and that's, in my opinion, not the best way sometimes to hire.
Noted. Conor, you know what? We might have unintentionally broken a word record because it's been almost 25 minutes and nobody has spoken about AI. So
let's go. Yeah.
Let's bring it in. So, okay, so there's a lot of buzz about, AI coming in, taking over finance job because finance job are mundane and all of that. What is the reality on ground?
So yeah, junior roles are definitely being affected. I think we were actually looking at our stats for 25 versus 24, and we actually have seen a noticeable drop in our junior level placements. And by junior level placements, I mean roles at 8 to 15K maybe, or 18K, like those sort of, AP, AOR, some of those sort of more transactional roles. We've seen a bit of a drop in them. But then it means that more senior roles are happening, more mid-level roles are happening. So I think those roles have definitely been absorbed a bit by AI. I think unfortunately it'll probably only continue in that space, but that's why I think people need to upskill, like finance professionals, get comfortable with AI. We have, especially for the generation that's older than you and I, these guys, by their own admission, won't be very good at technology compared to, this younger generation that technology has been their whole life so far. So I think if you can differentiate and, ERP implementations, that's a big one. That's a really good skill set to have, because now that in UAE in particular, for senior roles, is that because Dubai or Abu Dhabi is becoming more of a home for people. So that means CFOs are actually staying in their jobs. While previously, from what I've seen, is that because it was more of a transient sort of country, you could have great plans for your current company and then you just leave in 2 years. Maybe you want to implement SAP. Then your predecessor comes along and they're like, no, I don't like SAP. Let's go down this road. So that was happening, because if you notice, so many companies, they have really bad systems. They don't have things. And I personally believe it's because if you look at the company, they didn't have a long-standing finance leader in the company. And I think that will change as people are staying here longer. CFOs aren't leaving their jobs as frequently anymore. And the reason why that as well, it comes back to salary, is that if they go through interview process, they're on this, they want this, but the company offers the person who'll take this. So yeah, I think that's a really good skill set to have. So getting on top of that, because if you're a young guy or a mid-level guy, you go to interview and say, I've done this, I've done that in AI, you're going to be pretty attractive, I think.
So your message to the young listeners over here is that you have to upskill yourself. Getting your CPA, ACCA is just not enough. I mean, it is your foundation, but you have to build on top of that.
You have to think different. You have to have that. You have to have the point of difference, and that for me is really. And sorry, even for middle age, or whatever I want to call myself, but like everyone needs to sort of get a grip of it. It's not going to take over. I think, like at the moment now, all I get every day is some email from some AI thing. My personal view is that, you let companies be guinea pigs, invest in it, and see what one actually ends up being the good one.
Something that I learned from some of the seniors that I worked around with is that, in order to grow in a company, you have to basically throw yourself towards a challenge, not run away from it. So many people are like, oh no, this is not my comfort zone. I should just remain a part of this. So somebody said something very interesting to me, Conor. They said that if you haven't been invited to being a part of a special project in a company, being an ERP implementation, transformation project, then my friend, all this time you've been in the parking lot.
Yeah,
never in the company.
Yeah, it's a great way. Because it's very interesting you said that, because I think we were obviously speaking before about you've interviewed so many finance professionals, and I've been fortunate to interview quite a few as well. And the key common thing is they're seen as the fixer. And, it's just a common thing when they were said, especially the guys that were multinationals, they were like, I was based here, but then there was an issue in this country. I was sent there to be the country head then. And they're obviously the viewed as the top talent within those companies. And to your point there, and as you mentioned, that's when you're doing a pretty good job. I think if you're seen as that person that there's a fire over there, send Asad over there to fix that. You're obviously, as opposed to the other people who are in the parking lot.
Correct, 100%. You mentioned a little bit about job hopping. So when you look at a profile, and they have sort of hopped jobs, multiple times in a year, 3-4 months gap. Does that play negatively to the candidate? Are there some good explanations for that?
Yeah, look, of course, it's more for the client how they see it. So we need to make sure we position it the right way. Of course, sometimes the candidate can be the problem, but of course sometimes they're not. Maybe they dealt with a company which was very unprofessional. And the big thing at the moment is ethics. Especially finance professionals, they get asked to do things that compromises them. I was at a barbecue yesterday with a friend, and he was telling me some things he was asked to do, and he had to say no, and now he's out of work. And of course, you can't just bulldoze into a company and say you're not going to just. And the very big interview tip is: do not slate your previous employer in an interview.
Yes.
Do not, even if it was, just be professional, because it's not a nice thing. And of course, from the interviewer perspective. So yeah.
Cool. So while frequent job switching might be negative unless explained properly, at the same time, prolonging in a particular role, does that also play negative?
Yeah.
For example, you're getting a profile of a guy who's worked 20 or let's say 15 years in a company.
I did this conversation with a candidate 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
Because you can be seen as institutionalized by that company. And yeah, unfortunately, I think it is a hindrance, because yes, you got promoted along the way and everything, but it's not a good thing. I wouldn't say it's not a very, very bad thing, but it's definitely not a very, very good thing.
Yeah.
I think a clean CV for me is someone who's spent 3 to 4 years with a company, then moved on, and you've seen within that company, they progress. Like you progress in your current company, you can see they've got promoted, then they moved on. Like that's a good clean CV. Okay. So yeah, but again, obviously when you get very senior, it's a bit different because you might just you're there for the long term. But I think every couple of years you should be looking to move.
So that's roughly the sweet spot, right? 3, 4, 5 years with some growth in the current role.
Yeah, with some growth, and I think like anything, and people, if they're really honest with themselves, they know when they're in their comfort zone.
Yeah.
They know when they're like, I'm just cruising here, and that was probably like my personal thing when I was at Rob Walters, and I was just cruising along, not doing so. Yeah, try something different, I guess.
Cool. And this is where we move to the sort of the close of our discussion. I mean, this is the last theme that I want to touch with you. It's quite personal. It's about women, motherhood, and their career progression. Yeah. I think I take the story quite personally as well, because in my family, for instance, I see my sister. She's running a family of her own. She's progressing with her career as well. And I have a lot of respect for women who are working, because they have to juggle both things: the family, raising a family, and then of course sort of progressing their career as well. So, and of course they have their own challenges, right? So there's this of course motherhood, the maternity. Do you think the industry has caught up to this reality, or does this still play negatively and against women?
I think it's great to be a woman in UE in finance. I think we do our stats every quarter of hires, female to male. It's all females are always in the 40%. I think the highest we ever got was 48 one quarter, 48% female, 52 male. But the caveat with that is they're outnumbered 3 or 4 to 1 males, 2 female. Like there's a lot more male accountants than female. So of course that they are a little bit up against it. You came to the CFO breakfast there a few weeks ago. There's loads of women there, loads of women, which is great. And I think the more, we can get as many females out, then they can sort of look around. Because I think there's probably historically a bit of a thing in UE where networking events were just full of men.
Yes.
And the only female fella, I don't want to go there. It's just me and 20 men, 25 men. Well, now that's starting to change. We're trying to build our community. We're hosting a senior finance women's event in Abu Dhabi next week, which will obviously just be women. And it's building that. And I do think companies are going more and more for women. I think it's just we need to champion women as the finance leaders, because there's so many. Like, trust me, obviously we have LinkedIn Recruiter, so we can see exactly who's there, who's not in the market. And there's loads of female. But I do think there is sometimes not coming out of their shell, but of course they have other duties. Maybe they're not that interested in doing a networking event. They have other demands. So yeah, but it's definitely good. But it can be quite. But then the flip side of it is I speak to a lot of females, and again sometimes I'm banging on about this a lot, but there's some cultural challenges. With women working in certain companies and stuff like that, which make things tricky, I think.
Yes.
So yeah, it's good overall.
No, cool. So apart from just the gender diversity question, what I wanted to squash, if it's a stereotype, is that women who are thinking to start a family or raise a family, there's sometimes things that it's going to negatively impact my career because I'm going to be on a break of n number of months.
Yeah.
Is that a reality or is that not a reality?
The unfortunate reality here is that, and I've heard this from women, that sometimes in interviews that the interviewer will ask them, "Are you married?" Obviously, they can see if they're married.
Yeah.
Like in UAE, you can see married, kids, how many kids, how old. I've had feedback from candidates, female they recently got married, and one of the questions was, "Are you planning on getting pregnant?" You can't ask those questions,
totally not.
but
Unethical.
they do, and sometimes it's actually women. Like a woman asks this, another woman. So, well, I'm not just hating on men here now, but these are the realities of this market, and I think for people outside the region, sometimes they can be shocked. They're like, "Did they really ask that question?" And because there's been such an acceptance over the years that you can ask these questions, no problem. And because, of course, maternity cover is not as strong here as it may be in other countries and stuff like that, so it can be tricky. Because I'm thinking about it with my business hat on. Because the maternity in general is not that strong here, it's not as big of a hindrance for a company. Of course, if you're running a business and they get 6-9 months paid leave, would that come into my head a little bit? Maybe it would, yeah. If I was running the business. But here, because the maternity cover, it's quite not that strong currently. I think they are actually trying to make it better and fairer for mothers. But that's how I view it anyway, without rambling on too much there.
No, I agree with that. Cool, fair. And to the very end, generally what I do, Conor, is that there is this rapid fire kind of segment where I just throw in questions and I expect crisp and short replies. Of course, you can go on long if you want, but it would just stay with the spirit then. Okay, cool. So, in your view, what's the fastest way a perfectly good CV ends up in the no pile?
Hi. Just says hi in the email.
No name. Hi, Conor.
No name. Yeah, no
All
name.
right, cool. One interview answer that makes recruiters think, I've heard this 300 times today.
I smashed the interview. I did so great. If you're too confident, you probably didn't do that well.
One interview behavior that consistently hurts the candidate's chances.
Punctuality.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, late.
Showing up late, huh?
Yeah, if they're late, not respond. Look, I know sometimes, because I think sometimes, late. Punctuality is very important.
A well-dressed candidate versus a well-prepared candidate. Which one is going to go well?
Good question. Prepare to fail, fail to prepare. Prepared, I think, of course, there has to be some substance to how you interview, but if you're not prepared, you can look as polished as you want, but if you don't deliver, you're not getting the interview, are you?
100%. One LinkedIn habit that candidates think is helping them, but really isn't.
Constantly chasing. I'm talking from a recruiter perspective. If there's some people that will message me every 2 or 3 days, any update. I was like, unfortunately, there's not. I wish there was. I for our listeners, whoever is looking for a job, I wish we could place you all. I'd be incredibly wealthy. We'd have a great life, but it's not that easy.
Gotcha. One line on a CV you wish you could auto-delete across the entire finance profession.
One line on a CV. That's a good question. That. I think look, in anything where it's just I.
Yeah.
I think we is just using we, but then I guess using we is making sure that you can back up that you actually were adding value.
Yes.
Sometimes people say we this way, when you break into it, they were just at the very back of the project. Just and special achievements and sorry, talking about your hobbies and interests. That for me is like, if I look at a CV, I look at that quite quickly actually, just to see their personality.
Conor, this brings us to the close of this podcast, and I must say I've thoroughly enjoyed that purely because you've been authentic, and that was so lovely to see.
Pleasure. You're a gentleman. Thank you very much for having me, and I look forward to having you on our podcast soon.
Would be a pleasure. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to a close of today's podcast. Conor is a very popular man on LinkedIn. I encourage you to follow him over there and not to spam him on his inbox. Until next time, take care. Have a good one.